Ford and the Model T, the people's car. No, not that one. The car for the masses, a symbol of American industry. The Ford Model T meant for the first time the average person was able to get behind the wheel. There's absolutely no downside. None. Where would we be today without the car, or more importantly, the assembly line, that has seen mass production goods become a staple of the world of commerce for the last century? Huge mega factories working 24/7, each one with an assembly line sometimes a mile long. The guy largely responsible for all this was Henry Ford. Henry Ford, a name we all know or should know by now, was born on a farm in Michigan, USA in 1863. And if you are into your war history, which some people are more into than others, you'll know that 1863 was smack bang in the middle of the American Civil War. So at a time when farming was tough and angry men were swinging muskets around their heads, a young Henry Ford was starting out life and was being encouraged to learn the ways of the farm. But he wasn't really interested in being a farmer and didn't have any desire to eventually take over the family farm. He had shown an early interest in mechanics and built a small machine shop at the age of 12. He even built his first steam engine at the age of 15. The ability to turn his hand to complex mechanical tasks opened up doors early on, allowing him to secure a machinist's apprenticeship. After completing his apprenticeship in 1882, he worked on Westinghouse steam engines before becoming an engineer at the Edison Illuminating Company of Detroit. This proved to be a bright idea. Thomas Edison himself would become a mentor to Henry Ford throughout his lifetime, and as far as mentors go, this has to be a good one. Henry Ford started on his quest to build automobiles in 1893 when he began building a small one-cylinder combustion engine on his kitchen table. The table wasn't part of the design, but was better than sitting on the floor. This design would be improved upon in the next few years and was strapped to a frame with bicycle wheels. This quadricycle was completed in 1896 and was to be the first Ford car. In 1899, Ford resigned from the Edison Illuminating Company, and with others, they organized the Detroit Automobile Company, which went into bankruptcy within 18 months. His career had momentarily stalled, but Ford kept designing and building, and in 1901, Henry Ford founded his second automobile company, Henry Ford Company, which he subsequently left after a matter of months. This company would become the Cadillac Motor Car Company. Ford wanted his car to be right, but investors, as usual, wanted right now, which is a big reason for his swift exits. But we all know slow and steady wins the race. In 1903, Henry Ford was ready, and along with a group of more modest investors, having ruffled a few feathers with the rich guys from his previous forays, he formed the Ford Motor Company in 1903 with $28,000 and had 25.5% of the shares in the company. Over the next few years, Ford acquired more shares from the original investors, becoming president and controlling owner in 1906. The Ford family became the sole owners of the Ford Motor Company, eventually, in 1919. The Model T. You may be familiar with the famous quote, "If I had listened to what customers wanted, they'd have said faster horses." Now, whether Henry Ford actually said this or not, or words to that effect, the point is interesting, and it does highlight the need for vision in the world of innovation that isn't as essential when you are simply looking to improve something that already exists. When the car as a concept was starting to get rolling, people were still using horses as a means of transport. Cars were new and expensive. With this, people needed convincing. You can imagine all the boo-hooing that was probably going on. What do I need an automobile for? While patting their horse, Bucky. You don't need to change the oil on old Bucky here. More reliable too. That was about to change. In 1907, Henry Ford assembled a team of highly skilled engineers. Let's call them Soldiers of Fortune. That went about designing the Ford Model T. In 1908, the Model T was ready. But was the world ready? Yes would be the short answer. They were kicking horses to the curb, not literally, but due to mass production that wasn't seen like this before, suddenly there was a viable option for the middle class to own their very own automobile. The price for a Model T was $260 to $850. The car was much easier to live with than anything previously. The steering wheel was on the left, which made it easier to get in and out of. A windscreen was an optional bonus, and changing gear was a much simpler affair. This gave more accessibility to a greater clientele of both men and women. You still had to give it the old manual crank to get it started though. The design offered a number of benefits to people. It was sturdy, being fashioned from vanadium alloy steel, which offers strength while still being light. There was good ground clearance, so rural people were on board. This was a car that was built to last, and all the parts were made by the Ford company in-house. So confident in the Model T's performance and durability that in order to promote this to the British public, a Model T was driven to the top of Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in Britain, at 4,411 feet. The plan was devised by Henry Alexander, a motor dealer from Edinburgh, Scotland. Alexander wanted to show that an American mass-produced car was superior to a British handcrafted one. Alexander's son, Henry Alexander Jr., was tasked with the job of hauling a Model T up the side of a mountain, and if he failed, his allowance would be stopped. Given that Jr. was in his 20s at the time, Having your pocket money stopped as a grown adult man would be catastrophic. With this carrot looming over his head, Henry Alexander Jr. zigzagged his way up to the top of Ben Nevis. The journey was completed in 5 days. Each day the Model T was left overnight while the team stopped in a hotel and would resume in the morning. Henry Alexander Sr. was proven right, and the Model T was able to overcome some pretty harsh terrain and was still able to be driven home. Britain liked what they saw, and over 14,000 Model Ts were sold in the UK. This wasn't the only time a Ford Model T was used to demonstrate an eye-catching feat of engineering. It was prone to driving upstairs on occasion. Maybe they were onto something there. The Model T was an instant hit, the right time and the right place, with the right product. Before long, Tin Lizzie, as the car was now famously referred to, although the origins of the nickname is not 100% clear, was a regular sight on American roads. Henry Ford once said, "There's no use trying to pass a Ford, because there's always another one just ahead." By the early 1920s, more than half of the registered automobiles in the world, that's right, the world, were Fords. And in total, more than 15 million were eventually built and sold. So what other choice would you have in the early 20th century if you misplaced your horse and you need to get about the place? You could pop on a mink scarf and nip down to your local Buick dealership and pick up a Model 10, snazzy looking motor. However, compared to the Model T, it was heavier, had less power, and at $1,150, for the touring model at least, it was more expensive. All no-nos when looking at your new set of wheels. The Flanders 20 was also an option, and Walter Flanders had worked for Ford on the production line for the Model T, and therefore knew the manufacturing process. The Flanders 20 did suffer reliability issues, but were able to offer a valid competitor to the Model T, albeit for a brief production run. Overland had a variety of well-built Model T competitors, but most automobile companies at the time seemed to struggle against the Model T for value as a package. The production line was a big factor in making cars while driving down the price all the time. This method of mass production was a revolution at the time, and the reason why goods today can be produced at scale at a lower price. Henry Ford knew that if he could sell a car at the right price, people would buy en masse, rather than building individual cars that were more expensive, and therefore a smaller number of consumers could afford one. To achieve this, a moving assembly line was devised to make building each car significantly faster. The car chassis would run along a track at a set speed and at set intervals. Workers would then fit certain components of the vehicle. Wheels, for example, would be built separately, made from wood and lined with a metal rim. Each wheel, once made, was moved to an assembly line to be fitted. There was a number of body shell variants that could also be optioned, and again this was placed on a common chassis on the assembly line. This allows for more uniformity and a set speed of production. Staff were paid a set daily wage, and instead of a 9-hour workday, Ford implemented an 8-hour workday. A significant reason for this is so the assembly line could function 24 hours a day on a 3 8-hour shift pattern. Previously, factory workers were paid $2.34 for their 9-hour workday, but now Ford would pay $5 a day for an 8-hour workday. So people walked into work one day and their boss said, "We're reducing your hours but doubling your wages." Also, what do you think to this article I've just written? Well, people were on board with more money and less hours at least. This turned out to be a shrewd move, as there was an immediate boost in productivity and loyalty to Ford. Workers had pride in their work, which is good. What's more, they could afford to buy what they were making. Henry Ford once quipped, "Any customer can have a car painted any colour that he wants, so long as it's black." While this is mostly true, cars were only offered in black from 1914 to 1925. This highlights Ford's devotion to standardizing and streamlining the production at the expense of customization. This was Henry Ford's business model. Keep it simple, keep the price down, and sell as many as you can to as many people as possible. The Model T in popular culture, symbol of Americana. All across America and further afield, the Model T is still polished, waxed, and driven around fields by people wearing goggles. There are clubs and organizations in nearly every major city, and the Model T is still as recognizable today as it was a century ago. This iconic car has been featured almost continuously in TV and cinema, which is why the Model T is so recognizable to so many people. Downton Abbey, Peaky Blinders, they wouldn't be the same without an appearance from the Tin Lizzie. The last Model T rolled off the assembly line in 1927, after 19 years, and although the Model T goes down in history as an icon, it is the assembly line production method that was just getting started. Mass production is still dominant today, and much of the core principles put in place by Ford in the early days haven't changed. Cars are still assembled on production lines. Okay, there's more robots involved today, but the concept is the same. It didn't stop at cars either. The assembly line process is used in industries all around the world. Pretty much anything that needs assembling in large quantities, from computers to fridge freezers, they all had the Ford treatment. Next time your car gets stuck while you are trying to ascend your local mountain and you call for help on your mass-produced mobile phone because you want to get home to watch the last season of Downton Abbey, it might be worth considering the old saying, they don't make them like they used to, or do they? All things Ford and the Model T. Let me know. Thanks for watching.